Hey, well, welcome to Newspaper Breakdown, 19th for the 12th. Hope everyone had a weekend. I'm feeling a lot better than I was Friday. I'm not claiming that I'm full of vim, but I am better than Friday. Started the day with a bacon sandwich, and it always brightens the mood. That and a cup of tea. We've got news to get through, of course. Main story is with regards to the High Court. The High Court has said that the government's plan to have asylum seekers' applications done in Rwanda was lawful. This is paving the way for us to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. The High Court said that it is consistent with the Refugee Conventions and the Human Rights Act. Well, first off, we can expect appeals on this. This isn't just going to go away. That will be appealed. I'd say 90% chance of it being appealed. Not going to say they're going to win again. An appeal doesn't mean that everything's going to be turned around, but there's a good chance it will be appealed. There is more on the judgment, however. The judgment said that individual circumstances have to be taken into account, as in, do they have a good reason to be considered in the UK and not Rwanda? There's many things, safety, sexuality, all of these things have to be taken into account, but that does mean that the 8 claimants under consideration at the moment have not had their circumstances properly considered by the Home Office, which means that although the High Court has said that the plan is legal, with this extra caveat on where they actually have to do their fucking job, it does mean that it's going to become harder potentially for the government to deport people, because scaling up with the amount of people that they want to deport, you actually have to consider every individual case properly and thoroughly, and that is something that this government has not been doing. So expect more delays, more backlog, more expense, all for an idea that is inhumane at best, and at worst won't work anyway. We've said it before, Israel tried it in 2014, I believe. Thousands of people sent over to Rwanda and another country, I think it was Uganda, but I may just think that because it rhymes. And out of the thousands that were sent over, only one person was still there when journalists went there to see how it all went in 2017. So it's inhumane, it's not going to work, and potentially with this High Court judgment, it may become even harder for the government to do what they want. So it's not all bad news. Governments around the world have signed a once-in-a-decade deal to halt the destruction of Earth's ecosystem. Good. However, it was forced through by the Chinese president, ignoring objections from some African nations. This is just consistent, isn't it? This comes after 4 years of negotiations and repeated delays due to COVID. Nearly 200 countries, not the US or the Vatican, signed the agreement at COP15. The Democratic Republic of Congo, their negotiator, appeared to block the deal presented by China, as it did not create a new fund for biodiversity, they wanted one that was separate from the existing UN fund, which is the Global Environmental Facility. one of the reasons they wanted that is because China, Brazil, Indonesia, India, and Mexico are the largest recipients of the fund, and African nations believe quite rightly that they should get more money for conservation. Brazil, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo have the three major rainforests in the world. And so, even if you're not looking at the likes of Cameroon or Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo not being in the list of the largest recipients from the UN fund is mad as it is. This was moments after the Democratic Republic of Congo's negotiator said this, Chinese environmental minister and the Chinese president for COP 15. They signalled the agreement had gone through, leaving the negotiators from Cameroon, Uganda, and the DRC expressing anger that the agreement had been put through with the Democratic Republic of Congo, saying that they had formally objected to this deal, but a UN lawyer said, no, you didn't. And it's for such an important thing, it's incredibly childish, isn't it? I think you'll find that I actually said, no, you didn't. I didn't see it. I had my eyes closed at the time. I could not see what you were doing. Cameroon, the Cameroon negotiator called it a fraud, with the Uganda negotiator saying a coup d'etat had happened. So it's another example of we need to fundamentally do things about the planet. We do, it's obvious, but we also need to protect the people who are currently being affected by the changes that we have made, and we don't really do that. We do not take it into account. So, if the agreement is implemented, it could see drastic changes in farming, business supply chains, and the role of indigenous communities in conservation. This is good, because we've got many issues: plummeting insect numbers, the acidifying oceans filled with plastic, overconsumption, and 8 billion people. All of that together creates, we could be fucked. What the deal looks to do is protect 30% of the planet's nature by 2030, reform $500 billion of environmentally damaged subsidies, and restore 30% of the planet's degrading terrestrial, inland water, coastal and marine ecosystems. All of this is good. All of this is fantastic. It is needed, absolutely needed, if you want to live longer. One of the major problems, of course, is that governments, for all of the previous, over the decades, every single target they have placed, governments have missed. Every single one of them, without fail. It's one of the only things they're consistent at. And so whether or not this actually happens, if it does happen, it needs to actually happen. Just saying it and doing fuck all doesn't work. But if we're going to do it, you have to look after the people who are being most affected by it. Because you can't just railroad over people and say, well, we're doing this for the planet, so you lot can get to fuck. There's constantly, especially African nations, do tend to be trod upon more. And there's a whole thing we can have a look at, and you can see the history of Africa and the destruction of African nations, colonization by a lot of Europe, and now what you see is the likes of China and Russia have bulldozed their way in to trying to own and control African nations. Of course, the difference is that if the West is doing it, it's awful. However, if China and Russia are doing it, then we can all just ignore it. One of the major problems with the left. Unless the West is doing it, the left tend to ignore it because it's not really important. Sure, Russia have militia in certain African countries who are working on behalf of governments, and China keep on putting money in as an attempt for. I mean, it goes beyond soft power at that point, really. Anyway. UK government is refusing to release carbon emissions figures behind its transport decarbonisation plan, which is the Department of Transport is blocking academics from seeing the figures, including data on how much car use would have to be reduced in order to reach net zero commitments. Transport is the country's largest emitting sector, producing 24% of total emissions in 2020. If someone is not allowing you to see something, it is because it is not good. That's it. If the government's doing this, it's because the figures aren't good. They're not there going, listen, if you see these, you'll be too happy. You will be too happy. You cannot see it. You're not allowed to be too happy. You're English. You can't be happy. No, because the figures will make the government look shit. That's it. 2 stories left. Number of billionaires has increased by 20% in the UK since the pandemic. Rich getting richer, poor getting fucked. That is it. That is the constant society that we are living in. The Equality Trust charity said interventions from the government and by central banks during the pandemic allowed for an explosion of billionaire wealth in Britain as at the expense of the rest of the society. Of course, rich get richer, poor get fucked. That should be our fucking national anthem. Rich get richer, poor get fucked. Rich get richer, poor get fucked. Rich get richer, poor get fucked. Poor get fucked. They're all singing that. This has been fueled by a boom in house prices and the stock market. We have 177 billionaires now, with the combined wealth of UK billionaires gone from 53.9 billion in 1990 to 653 billion in 2022. Tax the rich. It's not a difficult concept. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Tax the rich. Tax the rich. Finally, bit of good news. Bus fares in many places in England to be capped at £2 for the winter under a government-backed campaign. This is to encourage more bus use, public transport use. From January to March, limits will be placed on the majority of bus operators. This is all good, but it falls short of Europe's radical moves to slash fares and reinvigorate public transport use. It's good news. Sure, it's not as good as it could be, but it's good. You need fewer cars being used. The only way to do that is public transport. You want a functioning public transport system for connections. If you have a functioning public transport system, things improve. Society improves, life for people improves. If you're able to actually get places, which is good, economies grow, everything win, 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 win. Right. Oh, that's enough for today. I will catch you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.